Let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to call the Downtown Transit Station Steering Committee meeting to order for Monday, May 20th. It is 9:01 a.m. Our only item on the agenda today is the discussion of the downtown boundary. And uh, the goal today is to, oh, there's Mark. Thanks, Mark. The goal today is to figure it out and take an official vote on it to advance that as a recommendation to the city commission. So what we take it from there, Ed.
Okay. So I sent out let's go first. Okay, so I sent out some things to think about. I mentioned towards the end of this presentation that all the maps you'll see are meant to encourage conversation. Possibly this group will decide one of them looks perfect, but maybe more likely is that something at least points you down a direction that you can start saying, well, we like this one mostly, but maybe we'd like to change it in this direction. So um, as a reminder, this is just the timeline we're on. I think this was an accidental step there, but we're in this first section of the boundary work here at the May meeting, and the last piece of this step will be a June 4th presentation to the City Commission for approval of just this step. So just a different way of looking at it, we have done the work with you all on the initial boundary, got that up for public comment, heard back from folks, and we're at the point where with your help finishing up final recommendation. These are the variety of outreach strategies that we did. These two links at the bottom go to the map with all the pins populated, and you can hover over and see people's comments. If you don't want to hover comment by comment, you can look at the table. It also has all the comments and all the pins. About comments are there. This is just to memorialize that work. We have got a lot of engagement. 173 unique individuals. There were a lot of pins without comments. So those were a little difficult to interpret exactly what people were looking for. But we did get 194 of those pins with comments, which was helpful. I think I've mentioned this before, but a lot of people did have exact site ideas. And so we'll tag those in this set of comments and kind of preload that third step of our process, which is when we want people to give us exact ideas. I think a person recommended an exact site near 6th and Wakarusa. I would imagine that won't fall within our downtown boundary. So that particular comment will not be preloaded to the third step, but anything that does end up in the boundary that's advanced, we'll go ahead and just put in there. People know. Just a touch point, the draft boundary we put out, about 3/4 of pins were inside of that area. So that's not a exact representation of how everyone feels, but just kind of, there was some centering around that. With all the, open-ended comments people left, tried to, I posted the whole list, but I tried to boil it down to some things that seem to keep coming up. And so one of those ideas was a consideration of people kept thinking of other mixed use or commercial areas and should that be included? So some of those examples are places north of the river, Johnny's area, the Warehouse Arts District in East Lawrence, the 9th Street corridor, kind of in both directions, primarily the western direction. Another set of comments seem to center around these properties that people can specifically imagine a center being at and currently perceive as not being a good use of space or feel like they have potential. So Amtrak at 7th and New Jersey came up a lot. The Union Pacific Depot across the river. The Law Enforcement Center, 11th Street near South Park. It's large parking. 11th and Mass, that hasn't been redeveloped yet. I believe it's slated to be redeveloped. old Allen Press site right there. The riverfront garage down by City Hall, and the Porter's building, which is always almost a grocery store in this town. But that kept coming up. So another general idea that we saw a lot of repetition was just a desired law enforcement presence as part of this site. That's not an unfamiliar topic to come up when we do any engagement. We are looking to see if we can afford in next year's budget some program support in by the way of a very unlikely to be an armed person, but like an unarmed authority figure, if you will, or somebody at the site who we imagine both helping people navigate the bus in the downtown area as like a staff person, and also perhaps being a eyes and ears and like a first someone who could maybe prevent some things from happening, things become escalated or they need to call PD or the mobile crisis response. So no matter where we look, we are thinking about this aspect, and of course want people to feel safe. Buses. Another theme that came up was the desired proximity, that idea of centrality that's been talked around here. The library is kind of an anchor people talk about a lot, but also just Mass Street in general, being like, I don't want to be too far from that. I'm trying to get from downtown. And then as we talked with people on the existing platform, part of this could be psychology, but part of it is, people have developed travel patterns. The general theme from writers was that they hoped it would stay not too far from where it currently is. So take that for what you will. I think some of it is people don't, a change can be threatening. I also think it is the practical location for a few different reasons. Okay, so I have 5 different, what I call discussion starters. These are kind of draft areas or maps or boundaries that I drew, kind of centered around some of these comments and what people were looking for. And they generally go from the smallest to the largest. I tried to show you kind of the range of what I think we kind of heard from people. So an option, this is from 7th to 10th and the alleyways behind Vermont and New Hampshire. So a pretty tight boundary, kind of gets at the idea of, proximity to most downtown destinations being as central as it can be. And I listed it, it could limit options. There's, less of a big area, could have to put more eggs in certain baskets, perhaps. Idea number 2 kind of builds upon that and expands some area, mostly north and west of the library. It kind of centers the library in the space a little more, to kind of react to the people who talked about that being important and still kind of keeping the focus a little bit tighter. It does get up and include things like the riverfront garage that were mentioned. Still leaves 10th as kind of the southernmost in this area. The third one is just exactly what we presented to the public. No changes here at all. So just wanted to re-show this as a talking point. There were, like I said, lots of respondents within this boundary. I note that, in some of the comments, it's too big, and in some of the comments, it's too small for different people's thoughts on this work. The fourth one is very similar to what was presented to the public, but it adds the couple of locations that kept getting brought up. So the Union Pacific Depot across the river and the Amtrak station are a couple of places that continue to be brought up when we talk about transit stations. And the last one is just pretty large encompassing. Of course, there's a lot of residential here that wouldn't be really viable options, but it aims to capture all the comments related to Warehouse Arts District, Hobbs Park, and sends the southern boundary all the way to 15th. There were some scattered comments as far as 19th, but kind of more The people who were looking at Southern Extension, 15th was kind of a break point of not those comments. So those are just presented as like to get wheels turning, but take your time by me talking. I think it's important to start diving into.
One question that's coming up for me is when people said these outlying locations, did they indicate that there are destinations near those outlying locations? Like, is there any reason they gave for why those locations?
I would have to look back at the comments. My gut feeling is there are not a lot of reason other than people were imagining non-single family residential locations in the area. They're like, oh, Hobbs Park is one of those places. I'm not sure if if there was a reason beyond that as to why that would be a good way to connect people to downtown.
What other questions do you guys have? If we can get those out of the way, and then if someone wants to throw a stab at like which starter to start with. That kind of imagine this.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what I'm imagining, but I assume there'd be some thoughts that some that resonated with people, some that scared people.
Are there questions before we get into trying to pick something? Can we just surface any questions that people have from the survey results?
I'm still sort of unclear about, as a writer, I like, like it in like I like number one the best and I like number five the least. But like I don't want to rule out things where there would just be like a really ideal location that because I'm not really super clear on like what like the most actual viable options to build are. And I wouldn't want to just like think about my own convenience and not and rule out options that could be like really beneficial and viable. And I'm not really aware of what those benefits would be.
Sure.
I guess the benefit of like a large map is we could still put a location in that, like number one, if that's your ideal. It's like number one is included in this larger boundary. So it's like a
But I'm so concerned that I would end up with something like in the Antipodes that would just ruin my life.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess what I like about this one, including like the East Lawrence commercial mixed use areas, is that it's kind of close to residential and it's close to downtown. It's kind of like the best of both worlds a bit. Like I hear that people want to be close to downtown, but people also have homes they need to go to when they ride the bus. So it's kind of, I don't know, it seems like it strikes the balance between both of those things, like proximity to downtown, proximity to residential areas. So one thing that kind of stood out to me with the large boundary.
Is the bus system's goal here to have something that services mostly the downtown area where a lot of people work and a decent number of people live, or is their goal to create a transfer station? Because those are two different goals. If they're the same goal, then it makes sense. But just, because I've had people comment to me, they're like, why does downtown need a transfer station when we can just have a bus stop? Which doesn't make a lot of sense to me personally, because I understand so many people do transit to downtown from different points. So there's a lot of buses that come, it makes sense for there to be a transfer point downtown. So I guess my question to the bus service would be, what is, the transit people, what is their goal with this? I mean,
that's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll try to answer it in the way I've answered it, but I'm interested to hear what writers will say as well. So I get downtown is a node, right? It's a place where people go. It's either an origin or a destination for a lot of the people. It's also a transfer point, and people need the ability to transfer in both directions. And so when the idea has been described of like, why not just have stops and parade those 5 routes through one after another, that works in a single direction. But if I'm trying to get from this bus to the one in front of me, it's already departed.
Yeah.
And I won't be able to make that transfer. So there has to be a way for them to all exist in the same spot for people to practically get out from that kind of area that a lot of people are trying to get to. It's the same reason why we didn't have like all of these buses just come through one after another, because that would work just fine if you only cared about that direction of travel.
Mhm.
The other direction of travel, you need options.
Mhm.
But I don't know. There'd be
Yeah, I've been thinking about this too from the rider perspective. Like, what do I need a bus that goes downtown to do for me? And it is those two things. Like, I do need it to take me downtown to a convenient spot where I can go, eat or whatever. And then also I need it to like connect me to other buses. So it seems like, yeah, those things, yeah, it's difficult to make them coexist in the same space, or it requires maybe some like one thing needs some things and one thing needs other things and they have to come together. But
Well, it just sounds like that's the requirement.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I'm understanding, that there is no, this thought of sticking it someplace that's, half a mile from down, I mean, not half a mile, but, more than a quarter of a mile from the central point of downtown doesn't make a lot of sense, because then you're asking people to walk, which you're adding a significant amount of time to their travel.
especially for folks who like don't
And people,
great mobility.
exactly, yeah. So
And
I
a lot
mean,
of people are carrying things.
and carrying, absolutely. So,
Also, downtown has our travel arteries to go in any direction.
Yeah.
You're going between Sixth Street, North Lawrence, go south on Mass, go to
Mhm.
campus. You've got established travel arteries there, where if you start moving it off to one side, or heaven forbid, North Lawrence, no,
yeah.
that's kind of logistically not, especially going to North Lawrence. Yes, we serve North Lawrence, but that's not going to be a transfer spot.
Yeah,
That
it seems
doesn't
like doing
make
riders a
any sense.
disservice of putting them so far
Transferring
from where they need to
across
go.
the bridge and back to do that.
Yeah, it doesn't sound very efficient for the buses either. I mean, especially to to go across the bridge and then effectively for most of the routes turn right back around and come across. I mean, that makes very little sense to me.
And if someone wants to be let in,
Same again.
So I think that kind of gives thanks, Blaine, for the question. I think it's a really great question. And as the public kind of wrestles with this, they'll probably, they might need help thinking through, like there are multiple reasons for a location decision. One of which would be, it's the destination people want to go to. The other is the kind of operational needs of the transit system to do transfers. Maybe it'd be helpful to make sure that's clear in the materials that we share with the public. Like, here are some of those considerations that we had to give. That's kind of behind my question, was kind of this question of, when someone thinks North Lawrence, is it because they're thinking that people need to get there, or because they think that's the best place to transfer, or they just think it's underutilized and they're not considering those other two things? So I think that gives us a preview of how the public maybe is reacting to this question. And we should be mindful of how do we engage on those three questions. Like, it's not just about, or how much of it is just about having an open space or underutilized space? How much of it is about destination? How much of it is about transfer? And kind of knowing that we have those three ways the public might think about it can really be helpful.
And as part of this discussion, kind of a future planning situation too, where we're hoping that the transit system expands, and therefore you're hoping for more ridership into the downtown area, because the city is pushing for density in downtown, which, if there's more density, hopefully there'll be less people with vehicles, so they would need to use the public transit system. I mean, effectively. So
Yeah, I mean, big part of what we do is economic development, actually getting people to jobs, so someplace they can buy things with money after their job. And so, yeah, there's functional limitations on our ability to park all those folks.
Absolutely.
So we have to try to do as best we can. If transit is not convenient or comfortable to get downtown, people won't choose it.
Absolutely.
So this effort is part of that, to try to, we're not trying to get everybody to change, but surely it has to.
Sure,
get
but
sliced in the pie.
Any percentage of people that it increases who live, work, or shop in downtown Lawrence that use the public transit, there'll be less pressure on parking, which is better. I mean,
So any other questions before we just try to throw out a?
In terms of this discussion today, do we want to get explicit about what is desirable in terms of locations downtown? Like, what are the most popular intersections and what are the services that people request the most? Or do we want to have that discussion when we start talking about sites and criteria?
So, throw something in, but I'm just gonna say, like, our goal is to advance something to the city commission.
Yes.
So think through, like, what's the public discussion the city commission is gonna face if we advance one or the other?
Yeah.
Because we're gonna know in short order how the public's gonna respond to this group's decision. And the city commission will then have to wrestle with it. So, Mark gave a preview. He's kind of leaning toward, or at least initially your reaction was kind of toward the broader one.
I would say I feel a bit changed after like hearing this group's
Okay.
perspective a bit. Because I mean, if the point is to go downtown, it's like, yeah, it doesn't make much sense to like stick it super far out like East
Right.
Lawrence. Yeah.
But I would say before we think about the sites, it's probably just the most immediate thing is what are we going to give the city commission so that they have that discussion and they might go exactly where you're imagining.
So based on what we've been discussing, I really think that the third starter one is probably the most accurate. I'd maybe take off north of 6th Street, kind of west of the bridge. I was originally kind of wondering, I've heard a couple people talk about the Amtrak station and I wanted to kind of consider that because it's not that far away, but the infrastructure of sidewalk, walkable sidewalk and traffic getting in and out of there, it's still, and it's still just a little bit off. And I think would present, I can understand why people would consider that though. I understand that. But overall, I think this third is probably the most accurate.
Would it do any? Oh, can we see the fourth real quick? Does it really do any harm to pick the fourth? Like, if you like the third, does it do any harm to pick the fourth? Because all it should.
It does, because it includes things that are horrible.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I don't like the north side, but like
North Lawrence.
could we cut? I would be happy with the fourth if like north. I hear like I feel like no one should have to cross the bridge, right? If downtown's the destination.
Yeah.
But Amtrak isn't far. That's, I mean, everyone's definition is different, but 2-3 blocks, like, and to have another big viable site, like I don't think it does any harm to like add, like jut out just a bit. Like you still have the boundary you like, and then you're adding another area that could be a viable site. We don't have to choose it, but it's still another option.
Yeah, if you're trying to say something.
There were a couple of things. Amtrak really just stops for passengers 4 times a day. So it's really not heavily used for people who are, riding a bus. You can get on a bus and get over there pretty close by. But a lot of people park there and stay there, for a week or so in their little parking lot on the side of the station. The other thing I was thinking about, and I had some discussion with one of our colleagues here earlier this morning when we were driving right on the bus over here. I was thinking about the location that's north of North Park. The location, the parking lot, the city parking lot that's west of the community building, bounded by North Park and 11th Street and by Vermont and Massachusetts Street. Because there's a parking lot there. And of course, it has some of those difficulties that we were talking about when we were talking about the Amtrak place. About, if one of the larger buses would have difficulty coming in, coming out, and the traffic on 11th Street is very dangerous right now. I go across the street, there quite often to go to that coffee shop. But and it's 11th Street is a dangerous traffic area. And it might, how difficult do you think it would be for one of the larger buses to get out of that parking lot? That's another kind of consideration, I guess, is, making a sharp turn on the heavily used road. But one of my suggestion would be to include that parking lot, that's just west of the community building. So it's bounded by Vermont, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
The street is called North Park.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
And
Is that captured in number 3?
Is it?
Yeah.
I think it is a number.
Yeah, it's in
Yeah.
as well.
Is there, can you give us a sense of the magnitude for the Amtrak? So there's quite a few pins. Was that one?
Stu. We'll put up any of the boundaries. Amtrak.
You're not idling cars.
Yeah.
Well, the car's still idle for 5 minutes.
Point you brought up. For fees.
Does that help anyone?
For me, I keep coming back to the first discussion of, I believe Haslett was the first one to say no to Sixth Street, anything north of Sixth Street. And then we've all kind of been on board with that. And also we talked about parades. Like Lawrence, we love our parades. And we have to be serious when we're putting forward our boundary restrictions about that and how buses are going to maneuver and go through that kind of a system, because we just love our parades. We all go to them.
What if your rider wants to get to the parade?
Well, and there you go, right there. You're right. And you're someone trying to get downtown. How are we gonna do that? How
Should
are
it be
we?
west of Mass Street because of the parades? Is that like a thought? Or is that?
Well, I'm just saying, remember where most of the parades go. They either
Yeah.
come between 6th and 11th.
For sure.
And generally they go east. If they come down 11, come down to 11th, they go off towards that part to the east, or they go over to North Lawrence. So I'm just saying, like, those are things we should be mindful of when we're talking about these different boundaries.
It's a good reminder.
So basically 8th and 9th and 10th, anytime there's a parade, you're gonna have to reroute buses, which we have to do now.
Well, no matter what, you'll have to reroute.
Yeah,
It's like, because the
yeah.
buses are coming from literally every direction.
Right.
You'll have
It's
to
just
reroute
how much do we want to do that? How close do we want to do that type of thing? Because if we're going to talk about the Amtrak station, that's a consideration we have to have. If we're going to talk about North Lawrence, that's a consideration we have to have. That should be part of that conversation because of their frequency. And then it's just something else we talked about with North Lawrence. Again, I know Lance lives there, but again, how many people are actually going there? It's destinations. Something brought up at land the other night, we were talking about this issue, is 15 minutes. You generally want people to not have to walk more than 15 minutes, the average individual. And thinking of mobility issues, that increases the amount of time someone's going to be walking. Think about the sidewalks that are available, whether they're straight concrete or mix of brick and concrete, because that affects people in a large way.
Shade, tree cover.
Tree cover's a big one, yeah. And then also some of the people don't maybe cut their stuff, so your sidewalk is not exactly a sidewalk you can walk on.
So if you're concerned about parades and the logistics of us getting downtown, like what would be your ideal boundary out of the ones you proposed then?
I mean, if we're gonna talk about 3 and then cut off the North Lawrence, we might as well just do number 2, is my argument, is where I kind of stand at it.
Yeah, let me get.
I think you mean 4 and 6. Yeah, 4 has
I'm talking about Matt number 2, because if we're gonna take number 3 and we're talking about just cutting off that top part. It's mostly what number 2 is, minus the law enforcement building. I know it's a little restrictive, and I do like number 3.
We could do number 2 and then include the law enforcement building, right?
Yeah.
We could.
It's kind of like that mix. Do we do number 3 and just cut off the north of 6, north of 6?
Of course, these are not meant to be like wholesale, like, so if you want to mix and match.
We can still
Something about the law enforcement locations. You know, you were talking about the parades. Another big thing are all the events that are in South Park.
Yeah.
There are quite a few events in South Park.
But I mean, that's kind of a nice thing, because
Yeah.
when people take the bus, and that's what we want them to do, but at the same time, I know a lot of people park
There,
from other parts of town, so it's kind of this mix. We want them to take the bus, we were trying to make this happen, but I get what you're saying.
When we built the station, I went to have a block party. Great. The whole thing, yeah. Let's just get there, and then you just take the bus to the party.
So you're showing now 2 and 3 underneath it?
Correct.
I have a question. So if we choose a boundary that ends up constraining site options too much,
We're locked in.
well, but what happens then? I mean, because it seems like within even this smaller boundary, there are several sites that seem possible, that we've kind of identified. And so I don't know, I'm wondering, I don't know.
Before you answer your question, can I ask one to build off of
Yeah,
it?
for sure.
Can the city commission change the boundaries?
Yeah.
Can they look, because to address her question, can they say, oh, you guys didn't consider this, we want that in there, or we'll be like, we did? I don't know how you're gonna do the presentation, that's up to you, but could they have that ability to change the map boundaries?
I mean, I just think it's their prerogative to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
they are relying on us to advance something that's been vetted. That
Yeah.
has had public involvement, that's gonna stand against scrutiny. So how it's presented is probably gonna matter, like kind of capturing kind of our dialogue, the public input. That'll help them. I'm assuming that'll help them with their consideration of it.
And in a comparatively recent Journal World article, maybe I already said this, the city commission, they published a map of downtown area already in the Journal World. So there's already a description of the boundary of downtown from the perspective of the city manager.
It's always been like a talk in town. Like people have always talked about what is technically downtown, like where the limits of each neighborhood is.
There's a map on the city website that shows the various neighborhoods, and they show what is downtown according to the city website. But I keep coming back to 3. It would probably take Constant Park north of 6th Street out of it, and go ahead and for now allow Amtrak to stay in there just in case that gets more traction. It's a little far away, but at the same time, it seems workable. The area around South Park seems workable, but yeah, given a little more options, I would keep North Lawrence out of it. I think that's too far, and having to cross 6th Street west of Mass Street, I think is expecting too much.
do you guys mind if I draw while you talk?
Yes, yeah.
That's probably help.
I would agree with that. Like remove what's north of 6th Street, but I would advocate for keeping Amtrak there.
Yeah, the more we
For
talk,
now.
yeah, the more I like that idea, because at least we're saying we're keeping.
We're listening to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're listening.
I think it's like we have our opinions, but it's also like we have to listen to what
What
other people are saying.
list.
Yeah.
So on that note, I have a list of most frequently asked for destinations when I am driving routes downtown. Like, where do the passengers ask, like, how do you get here? Where is it? And that is the library, City Hall, 6th in New Hampshire, the courthouse at 11th in New Hampshire, and just basically a cluster of high traffic around 9th in New Hampshire. Just they ask for different businesses around 9th in New Hampshire and 9th in Mass. And those are the big ones. So I think
That's really
that should be said out loud for like what people want centrally for downtown.
Right. None of those things are near Amtrak.
Well,
City Hall's important. People got to pay their water bill there still. Like they gotta.
But yeah, one more to that. Do you have a sense of the number of people that are also just transferring?
Oh yeah.
Kind of go back to our early discussion, like it serves both purposes.
I'm gonna say it's half and half. I'm gonna say half the people are transferring and half the people have arrived at the destination. It gets tricky because I think a lot of people build in like, I'm just gonna walk around downtown for an hour while I wait for another bus, or I've done that before, like go get lunch and then get my next bus, like just.
So they're not,
Hey,
they're kind of transferring, but technically
right,
maybe
they're in the
not.
middle, yeah.
Fluctuates throughout the day.
Yeah, definitely.
Early in the morning, like before school and before work, you got a lot of people that are transferring. They're coming into downtown and transferring to go to either to campus or out to the west side of town or whatever. And then during midday, it's a little more destination, and then it kind of, again, in the evening, there's more. At least that's what I've observed as a.
Is that something that you have data on to help the public understand like the multiple ways that downtown gets used?
We have boarding and alighting information by time of day, by stop.
So like how much is it transferring going on?
Transferring is difficult.
Okay.
We no longer have fare free. We don't even use transfer slips anymore. We've never had technology to map that. It's always been a paper system, even when there was fares. So we prior knew the number of transfers, but couldn't tell you much about how much from one route to another.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the best way to think about that is like the time of day, like
yeah.
What's that, like people are picking up their kids around 3 and 4, people are getting off of work around 5 and 6, people are going to work around like early morning 7 to 9, and then in between those times people are hanging out on their day off.
Yeah. Okay. Well, without data, I think we still probably need to kind of explain how it gets used and make sure that people have an understanding that it's not just destination.
Right, yeah.
You could look at the the boarding of when, of each route each time and get some idea of that. Take a little longer, but you could get some idea by just looking at the boarding. It's got, how many people got on Route 7 at this time?
I've made some changes for some further discussion. Reacting to the Amtrak discussion I was hearing, and I was reacting to the law enforcement center discussion. There you go. Reactions. So let me turn on the cut off the folks who talked about that area of north of 6th Street.
So what was removed there? Oh, okay, that's okay. Yeah, that's all really viable area anyway.
Private property, church.
Yeah.
South Park just did not re-include that. I don't know what folks think about that.
Doesn't seem like the public's going to be too interested in building a bus transfer station in South Park.
Yeah.
Just a general
Interesting
comment. Yeah. I mean, I agree as well. So I also don't think it's very central. Personally, don't think it's very centralized if downtown is the goal. It's very much at one end. So
Ideally, I'd like to see something very central.
yeah.
The people, businesses don't want it really central, they don't want it close to Massachusetts.
Yeah, and as somebody who owns a business in the 800 block of Mass, I understand that sentiment, but I also understand that we really have to look at the future that is our downtown area. I mean, and I understand that they all truly believe that nobody comes downtown on a bus and then spends money in their stores, which is, I'm pretty sure, incorrect. But we have to be thinking more about what the city needs, and I mean, and retail, it's important, and I'm a member of that community, but I also understand that this is a bigger discussion than just that.
And it impacts the people who work for you too downtown.
Absolutely. I have employees who ride the bus, and I think that's a great benefit for them. Parking in downtown is it's not horrible, but it's not great. And
good for workers though.
And no, it's not good for workers.
Yeah,
And
2 hour lots for beavers.
Right, yeah, there are lots of meters or the roofs of the two parking garages, which are,
Oh, yeah.
you know, would be fine, but there's been a lot of issues with people hanging out in those and causing problems. And so that's, I have employees that feel unsafe going into the garages, especially in the evenings. So I, you know,
That's, yeah, it was way safer in comparison to me than the parking garage.
yeah. So. And, you know, the parking discussion, this is outside of this, but it's always, I mean, as long as I've lived in Lawrence for 25 years now, and it's always been oh, there's not enough parking. Well, you could build 10 more parking lots and there still wouldn't be enough parking. It's just a perception thing. Yes, you can't park right in front of the store that you need to go to in that instant, but that's just reality.
And what I was thinking about when I was thinking about employees is that you see people who parked in one of those 2-hour parking lots come out.
Move their vehicles.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And some of the rest of us.
I am guilty of that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, for whatever situation, yeah, I've done that. Normally I do not, but I have done it. I know that's outside this discussion, but I do think it's part of this discussion.
In the public record now.
Yeah.
I think it's part of it.
Yeah.
There is a perception there. And I think that's why a lot of business people in comments they've made to me are interested in, you know, the Amtrak site. Because they're like, oh, well, we're just pushing it out. So we're not affecting parking in the downtown area. The first discussion that went up was 3 or 4 years ago that was basically talking about, I think the site that had the most interest, at least from transit, was on Vermont Street in the 800 block. And that was a great central spot, made sense, you know, but it was very upsetting to the people who owned businesses in that area. So.
And I don't know if it's like relevant necessarily, but like also with just the amount of like parking that isn't actually available for people downtown. Cause like you said, the Allen Press lot, like being redeveloped, I don't know if that's still a private lot or not, but like that one, the Borders lot, the Midco lot, that's like the Oregon stuff, like all those lots are just like empty usually because they're like private or they're like other reasons that people can't park there. So it's like, I know we can't just like finagle like getting in there and building a bus stop or bus station real fast, but to me, it's like, as again, like as a business owner too, it's like, I want it to be more centralized downtown. And I also want it to be like in a spot that's like underutilized, obviously right now. There's a lot of those spots.
When I think about the Borders location, aren't there 2 really large entertainment venues and office things going in? And one of them into the old Journal World block and the other one into the old, was it the Oregon factory?
Reuter.
Yep.
I mean, both of them recently, you know, there's a lot of work done on that block, you know, between Mass and New Hampshire. And then a company has just bought the Reuters building just recently, entertainment and offices. You know, so there's going to be a lot of traffic in the parking lots that are close into there.
Yeah, and they're not adding additional parking. Those things that they're doing. Nobody's adding additional parking. So with those constructions. So
in fact, they're going to make a miniature golf place out of this very small parking lot here on north of it.
Well, that's been proposed. It has not been officially. The city has to agree to lease them the land. They have not agreed to that yet. Yeah. That's
when this gets presented to city commission, regardless of what is presented, you're going to have that group of people that is just opposed to it no matter what. And you've run into it before, you're going to run into it again. So, you know, somebody's going to be dissatisfied and hurt no matter what. So we have to try to get the best consensus we can. The people that actually do have an interest in seeing something done. And so that's kind of where having the boundary a little bit expanded, at least for now.
How are we feeling about teal? I feel like teal that's making me happy.
Yeah, I think
it seems like it addresses like all the clusters of concern.
Yeah, kind of liking that. Yeah,
I think it looks good. I mean, personally, I would vote for that.
Yeah, how does this work? Do we just
I think we just need to take a vote.
We give them 3
You guys are all good.
For Charlie, I know we might have some members of the public. I don't know how you want to do public comment or item basis or when.
Well, we haven't done it yet, so.
Yeah.
Megan is the only one that hasn't said anything. You still on the call, Megan?
JT. Yeah, Megan.
She said,
Appreciate you, Megan.
You're dream.
Hope you feel better soon.
JT's off mic.
Is there anyone from the public who wants to give us any thoughts on this? Raise your hand, maybe. JT, you're off mic. Your mic is off, so do you want to say something? If you stepped away. Oh, gotcha.
No, thanks.
Appreciate you. All right, so I think we just, if you guys are ready, we just need a motion to approve. What do we want to call this? Make it simpler.
I'll make a motion that we vote to approve the teal map.
The teal map.
I second.
Motion's been made by Lance, seconded by Dustin to approve the teal map as developed during the meeting. Any other discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. All right. Next item on our agenda is our next meeting, will be June 17th.
I've got a question. So we're not supposed to give them 3 terms?
Not at this stage.
No, we're basically saying, here's their boundary.
Sure, I'm sorry.
And then get their reaction to that. They might just kick it back to us. They might change it. It's up to them. Right? The goal is that they'll approve it. And then we've got to hit the first goal, which is to have the boundary. Is there anything you want to say about the June 4th meeting?
Yeah, I'll say a couple of things. So as soon as hopefully there's an approval on June 4th of the boundary. As soon as that happens, we then have the ability to post the map for people to give us specific site ideas. You know, we've still got criteria to work on, how we'll decide, but once we can tell people you can only drop a pin inside this boundary with your best idea, we can start doing that. So I think we plan on starting that shortly after the June 4th commission meeting, so that there's at least 2 months of time where people have the ability to give their idea of a specific site. It's good. So we can capture that. The other piece I want to mention on this next phase, the site selection or the criteria, site selection criteria. A lot of good notes from the last discussion we had about that. This is going to be a complicated and dense part of the process. And so we've been talking about the best ways to do engagement, and it's unlikely to look similar to what we did this first round. We will definitely still have as easy as possible to understand information in a web survey. And so you and the people you know, please encourage to take that. I don't think it's going to be feasible for us to talk with writers on the platform downtown for 6 minutes between transfers and help them understand like what the criteria means and what input they can give us to help with that. And so we're thinking about incorporating focus groups into the outreach model, and so might need your help identifying folks who may not be able to take the web survey or would be interested in a group of 10 or fewer discussion, probably over like a lunch hour or something, where we have time to explain to a small group, this is what the criteria means and why it's important. What would you value, or what do you want to make sure we look at in any given site idea? So just be thinking about that. You know, at the June meeting, we've still got time on this because we'll be asking you just to get to the point where we're putting something out for the public. It'll be the same as this boundary where you'll see it again after we get that feedback. But just want to prime that this next phase will be tricky. The third phase will be very comfortable for people. You know, I want it exactly there. Tell me why.
Do you feel like the time that you allocated for that site selection process is adequate?
I think we'll adjust as needed. I think we're going to try to hold to the schedule that we've shown, which is this group seeing it to get it out to the public. It's out to the public for 30 days, and then you see it again and revise it.
So the focus groups would be like where it's out to the public for 30 days?
30 days.
Okay.
So in the late June to mid-July timeframe is when we're hoping to try to get.
The thing is
a lot of focus groups.
Students, right?
Yeah.
I'll miss like KU students.
Yeah, campus schedule is always tough with
hard to work around
annual projects. Yeah.
I was just wondering if focus groups are going to cause you to like just need more time. That seems like a lot of intense
Well,
work.
because like I guess you could stagger it to where if you had the survey out for a month, in that survey you ask people if they would want to be involved in a focus group, and then you have another month you could reach out to those people who said yes, I would like to be contacted for a focus group. I know that's how.
Yeah, right. It was like reaching people who can't fill out the survey. But also I know students who are in town for.
You're right, yeah.
Yeah, so I was hoping that some of you might be able to help make these connections. I think staff was also planning, like we can go to the platform downtown like today and start asking people, would you be willing to talk with us for an hour sometime in June, July? I think we can get people that way.
I'd love it if we had like multilingual support as well. I have a lot of writers that don't speak English as a first language that I think have important insight.
You could try to send them our way. I speak a little bit of Spanish. You know, Mark can help us with some folks at library have helped us before. Connie at the county has helped us before, so we can also engage folks in Spanish.
Yeah. Maybe I want a brochure. Maybe I want like a threefold. Here's what we mean by criteria, and here's like how you get a focus group. Maybe I don't even need like a bunch of brochures. Maybe I just need one that I could carry, that I could like show people and like give them like someone's email back and like a subject line. I could jumpstart the process over and over. Because like, I could just spread a bunch of bait then and then. Even if only a couple people bite, then we'll at least get more engagement.
Okay, I'll think about.
Yeah.
You're thinking Spanish and English then.
I would love that. At least like a couple sentences in Spanish.
Okay, let me think about that.
A lot of my over the summer students at KU are also either Japanese or Chinese. And I think that could be good. We have a pretty big Asian population in general.
People I ride with on bus 11 are, a lot of them are from the subcontinent, from India.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's a lot of languages and most of them speak English really well.
Yeah. In terms of like detailed discussion, I think it's cool to cater to like multilingual support. If it's possible, I know that that's really difficult. I know we have
I mean, we'll start engaging people soon. So like if you have writers that you know of, start talking to them soon.
Yeah.
So we can if we can just get contact information for I don't know, 20 or 30 people in the hopes that we could, smaller number than that will actually participate, but maybe we can get three focus groups or so.
It might be that if you know of some writers that say are speaking Mandarin or Indian or whatever, if you happen to get to know one of them well enough to say this is what they might be able to help translate to some other. That works out.
I feel good about that. That's exciting to me. Support focus groups.
All right, anything else for the good of the order?
You feel prepared, Adam? Do you feel you're gonna give the presentation, right?
I think I'd like to talk with Charlie about what, I mean, I'm happy to give it all, or if, you know, I do think I want to make clear through this process that it's a steering committee led process, so I think it would be helpful and.
Do you need us there? I guess
That was my next question.
Yeah, and if folks are willing to, be there virtually or even, I think would be good in case there's questions or if you wanted to chime in. Something about the process that it's about. Always more helpful when you can speak for yourselves rather than me trying to speak for you. But I know.
June 4th at
5:45 is the start time. And we'll see as that agenda comes together, what where this item might fit. I know we talked about it being a regular item, so that's what we'll list it as, presentation item. But we'll see what else ends up falling on that date. Yeah, am I saying that right? June 4th? Yes.
like Tuesday.
Yeah.
Usually have a half-hour private thing.
Sometimes if it was an executive session, they'll start at 5 p.m. and finish it by 5:40. So they'll start the.
Okay. I think we're done then. You could take a motion if you want. Or not.
Move to adjourn.
Second. A second. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Being adjourned.
Thank you.